Good morning and welcome to Wickford and Stanford La Hope Salvation Army on this 18th of July in the year 2021. We're so glad that you could spend some time with us this morning. We are continuing to look at the Bible on interrupted lives, and today we're thinking about the interrupted life of the Old Testament prophet Hosea. In the week ahead, tomorrow, Monday afternoon, we have our Zoom Bible study. If you would like to take part in that, please contact us and we'll tell you how you can do so. Then on Thursday in Wickford Car Park, the town food bank will meet between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Carol is now going to share our reading from the Old Testament book of Hosea.
Today's Bible reading from Hosea contains selected verses from chapters 1, 2 and 3. So Hosea's family. When the Lord first spoke to Israel through Hosea, he said to Hosea, "Go and get married. Your wife will be unfaithful and your children will be just like her. In the same way, my people have left me and become unfaithful." So Hosea married a woman named Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim. After the birth of their first child, a son, the Lord said to Hosea, "Name him Jezreel, because it will not be long before I punish the king of Israel for the murders that his ancestor Jehu committed at Jezreel. I am going to put an end to Jehu's dynasty, and in Jezreel Valley I will at that time destroy Israel's military power." Gomer had a second child. This time it was a daughter. The Lord said to Hosea, "Name her Unloved, because I will no longer show love to the people of Israel or forgive them. But to the people of Judah I will show love. I, the Lord their God, will save them. But I will not do it by war, with swords or bows and arrows, or with horses and horsemen." After Gomer had weaned her daughter, she became pregnant again and had another son. The Lord said to Hosea, "Name him Not My People, because the people of Israel are not my people, and I am not their God." God says Israel is to be restored. The people of Israel will become like the sand of the sea, more than can be counted or measured. Now God says to them, "You are not my people," but the day is coming when he will say to them, "You are the children of the living God." The people of Judah and the people of Israel will be reunited. They will choose for themselves a single leader, and once again they will grow and prosper in their land. Yes, the day of Jezreel will be a great day. Hosea's family. The Lord said to me, "Go again, show your love for a woman who is committing adultery with a lover. You must love her just as I still love the people of Israel, even though they turn to other gods and like to take offerings of raisins to idols." And so I paid 15 pieces of silver and 7 bushels of barley to buy her. And the Lord states his love for his people. "Israel, I will make you my wife. I will be true and faithful. I will show you constant love and mercy and make you mine forever. I will keep my promise and make you mine, and you will acknowledge me as Lord. At that time I will answer the prayers of my people Israel. I will make rain fall on the earth, and the earth will produce grain and grapes and olives. I will establish my people in the land and make them prosper. I will show love to those who were called unloved, and to those who were called not my people, I will say, 'You are my people,' and they will answer, 'You are our God.'" Amen.
Today, as we think about a life interrupted, the life of Hosea, I wanted to start and end with songs by a former commanding officer of the Wickford Salvation Army Corps, John Gowans, who went on to become General of the Worldwide Salvation Army. He wrote two songs which entirely encapsulate the message of the book of Hosea. And the first song we're going to listen to right now is "You Can't Stop God from Loving You."
You can't stop rain from falling down, prevent the sun from shining. You can't stop spring from coming in, or winter from resigning, or still the waves, or stay the winds, or keep the days from dawning. You can't stop God from loving you, His love is new each morning.
You can't stop God from loving you, though you may disobey Him. You can't stop God from loving you, however you betray Him. From love like this, no power on earth the human heart can sever. You can't stop God from loving you, not God, not now, nor ever.
You can't stop ice from being cold, you can't stop fire from burning, or hold the tide that's going out, delay its sure returning, or halt the progress of the years, the flight of fame and fashion. You can't stop God from loving you, His nature is compassion. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la.
From love like this, no power on earth the human heart can sever. You can't stop God from loving you, not God, not now, nor ever. You can't stop God from loving you, not God, not now, nor ever. You can't stop God from loving you.
The second Salvation Army musical was written by John Gowans and John Larson and first performed in 1969. They chose as their subject the Old Testament book of Hosea. Hosea is one of the 12 minor prophets, which include Daniel and Jonah. They are called minor prophets not because their message is unimportant, but simply because they are much shorter in length than the prophetic books written by Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. Two of the songs from the 1969 musical are in our 2015 Congregational Songbook in the Salvation Army. And from these two songs alone, you can grasp the central themes of the book of Hosea. Both songs talk about the condition of the human heart. Both talk about God's astonishing love for us. To quote from the song we have just heard, "From love like this, no power on earth the human heart can sever." Everyone on this planet has been made for a special relationship with God. The Bible tells us that we are special for the simple reason that we are made in the likeness of God. You can check that out in the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. And even after the first people rejected God and his advice, and they ended up living in the wilderness, God still took the initiative with people and made an agreement or a covenant with us, that he would be our God and we would be his people. In other words, God said that in spite of the failings of mankind, of you and of I, he would never stop loving us. Clearly, people had nothing to bring to the table to make such an agreement, whilst the God of creation, of holiness, of justice, voluntarily brought his love and his mercy and his grace, which he wanted to share with us. All we had to do was to stay loyal to God. That was really the only command given to us, as summed up by Jesus. Matthew chapter 22, verse 37. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and love your neighbour as yourself. Yet these simple commands were completely ignored. God complains through the prophet Hosea, chapter 6, verse 4, "Your love for me disappears as quickly as morning mist. It is like dew that vanishes early in the day." Hosea, his wife Gomer, and their children had a dysfunctional family life. The Jewish nation had a dysfunctional relationship with God, so God uses the family life of Hosea as a form of living parable. He uses Hosea's enduring love for his family to speak to the people about his own enduring love for them. Hosea lived in a time when people had abandoned God in their search for the latest thing, the latest fad, the latest fashion. One of the less damaging things that God says about the people is that the country flits around like a silly pigeon. See chapter 7, verse 11. On the surface, things did not appear to be too bad, for the people still used words of worship when they spoke of God. If you like, they said nice things about him and to him. Yet the way they lived their lives differed from what they said. They said nice things about God, but they were merely paying him lip service, for they went and lived exactly the same kind of life as all the other people in the countries around them, people who had rejected God. As a result, they neglected God's laws. One of the consequences of this was that there was an epidemic of hate, of crime, of broken relationships, of failure. Does that sound familiar today? I think it does. And what is all the more astonishing is that Hosea's prophecies date from around 2,750 years ago. So the nation is dysfunctional, and the consequences of this spill over into everyone's lives. That is exactly what happens when we leave God out of the equation. Hosea's family life is also dysfunctional, and things deteriorate further, as is seen when he comes to name the children. One is named Unloved, which kind of suggests that Gomer is not going to be a good mother. But as a prophet, Hosea uses the name to highlight the conduct of the people of God. They are behaving as if God does not love them, as if they themselves are unloved. Their attitude towards God is not a loving one, so they can hardly expect anything good from him. They can hardly expect him to love them, can they? The seriousness of their position is rammed home when Hosea names his next child, "Not my people." This is a stunning reversal of God's agreement with his people, the covenant made with Moses on Mount Sinai when God proclaimed, "I am your God," and then claimed the people as his own, even though they had brought nothing into the relationship. But notice it is not God who has reversed the agreement, it is the people who, by their own behaviour, have done their own Brexit. They have withdrawn from God's covenant and therefore removed themselves from the benefits of being members of God's family. There's a lesson there for us, isn't there? If we feel that God doesn't love us, perhaps it's us who have withdrawn ourselves from the love of God. Finally, Hosea's family implodes when Gomer leaves him, takes other lovers, and ends up being trafficked as a slave. But now comes the turning point in the whole story. The family life of Hosea is the background to an astonishing revelation of God's grace. God invites Hosea to extend forgiveness to his wife, and in his own personal act of grace, to take her back into his family home. We read this in Hosea chapter 3. The Lord said to me, "Go again and show your love for a woman who is committing adultery with a lover. You must love her, just as I still love the people of Israel, even though they turn to other gods and like to take offerings of raisins to idols." So I paid 15 pieces of silver and 7 bushels of barley to buy her. Just as Hosea's wife destroyed her relationship with her husband, so the people had destroyed their relationship with God. Just as Hosea bought back his wife out of love and to give her another chance without making any preconditions, so in an astonishing act of grace, God announces through Hosea that he is going to do something similar for his people, again without preconditions. God says through Hosea, chapter 2, verse 19, "Israel, I will make you my wife. I will be true and faithful. I will show you constant love and mercy and make you mine forever. I will show love to those who are called unloved, and to those who are called not my people, I will say, you are my people. And they will answer, you are our God." This is amazing. Note that God is making promises to his people without his people promising anything in return. This is an astonishing act of grace. Notice that the people who had become unloved through their own acts, their own actions, their own decisions, continued to be loved in spite of their rejection of God. Notice that the people rejected as not my people are once again invited back into a loving relationship with God. He says, "You are my people," and they will answer, "You are our God." In the New Testament, it is precisely this picture which Peter, the senior disciple of Jesus, writes about in his first letter, chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. "But you are a chosen race, the king's priests, the holy nation, God's own people, chosen to proclaim the wonderful acts of God who called you out of darkness into his own marvellous light. At one time you were not God's people, but now you are his people. At one time you did not know God's mercy, but now you have received his mercy." Notice how these names of the sons are suddenly reversed, so that the people who had fallen away from God are once more, through God's benevolent kindness, through his grace, friends with God, unloved no longer, instead the people of God. Just as Hosea bought his wife back from disaster with 15 pieces of silver, so Jesus buys us back through his blood shed on the cross for us. There is nothing we can do to secure a personal relationship with God. Rather, Jesus has done it all for us through the cross. We just need to accept God's offer of forgiveness and redemption. It is through the Son that we are forgiven. We just need to accept his invitation to be part of his royal family. God used the interrupted life of Hosea and his family to teach that his love for us will never die, even if we wander away from him. Perhaps you need to interrupt your life today. Perhaps you need to ask for God's forgiveness and accept his love for yourself. It doesn't matter how chaotic your life is. It is always useful to stop and remember just how much God loves you, just how much it cost so that you could be a member of the royal family. I leave you with words which John Gowans wrote for the musical Hosea. "If human hearts are often tender, and human minds can pity know, if human love is touched with splendour, and human hands compassion show, then how much more shall God our Father in love forgive. In love forgive. Then how much more shall God our Father our want supply and none deny.
If sometimes men can live for others, and sometimes give where gifts are spurned, if sometimes true